welcome back. Welcome back to the To Be a Boy podcast. Last week, we dropped an emergency episode off the back of the world turning upside down after Adolescence was released. And we just want to say a massive thank you first and foremost. The response has been really, really good. I've had loads of messages from parents, especially saying they were confused. They didn't really know where to turn. Adolescence was quite traumatizing. And the podcast episode, and especially the guests as well, really helped them to see some light through the darkness. So I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's engaged with us and is listening into the podcast.
Yeah, and thank you to the guests who I think gave some really reassuring advice and reminded us that it's not emergency stations. Yes, we need to be alert and aware, but there are some very practical things that we can do that will keep our kids more safe online.
And Joeli, what have you done to keep your kids safe online?
I've had an interesting few days. My eldest son does have a laptop, and slowly this laptop has migrated into his bedroom. We never agreed for that to happen, but it's happened over a period of probably about a month, where he's ended up getting this set up. So he's got a laptop and he's got a keyboard, and he started just sitting in his bedroom with his headphones on and playing games and watching things on the internet. And after the conversation we had, I thought, right, I'm going to have to put a stop to this. So one evening I went in and I said, okay, we're going to have to move all of this stuff out into the living room because I don't want you sitting in your bedroom on screens. And he was so upset. It was a horrible evening. He couldn't understand why I was doing it. He kept saying, it's that program, isn't it? It's that program that you and Dad have watched. And I had to say yes. But then, of course, he was like, why is this program turning my life upside down? And he got really cross and his anger came out, which both of my kids can express anger and get to a point where they sort of pick things up and throw things around the room. I just sort of rode it out and let him sulk, and he refused to speak to me for the rest of the evening. Even when I made him his dinner and put it down, he just grunted at me.
What did you make?
Probably pasta. There's nearly always some form of pasta. The next day he came round and I sat him down again and I tried to explain to him, you can play your games, you can watch things on the internet within reason. I just don't want you doing it completely away from the rest of the family because we don't live in a commune. This is a family and families sit together. And so now he's completely ruined my desk. So my work desk is in the living room on the side, and he has taken over my work desk, which I think is a sacrifice I'm willing to make. But it means that I often now find myself doing work on the floor, hunched over my laptop.
Yeah,
what about you? What have you
similar,
done?
actually. So my eldest is 9 and she has a laptop and she plays Roblox and she watches all these influencers on YouTube, like the family influencers. Have you heard of them? They're really, really rich and they just do these fake scenarios and she's like, loves these influencers. And she plays Roblox with her friends. And similar to you, kind of just migrated further up the stairs to then she's just in her room with the door closed and we don't realize. And it really kind of happens quickly.
Yeah.
And when we're busy with the youngest, it's really easy just to actually let it happen because they're kind of just looking after themselves. Had the similar conversation, said, look, you just can't be in your room. You've got to come downstairs. And she took it quite well. I think the challenge is for us now, just making sure we stick to that rule and do it every day. Yeah. And when we're exhausted and we can't really be bothered and we're tied up with something else, like sticking to it. And that just comes with parenting, right? Like, persistence, consistency every day. It's really bloody hard.
You're just like, oh, just leave me alone.
Exactly.
I just need a bit of respite. The easiest thing to do is just let them do what they want, right?
Parenting's difficult. It is really, really tough. Like emotionally, physically, mentally. But, I think one good thing that's come from the program is just reminding us all, keep on it. Even if it's difficult, even if they don't like the messages they're hearing from us, we've got to do it, right?
Yeah, we've got to do it. And, moving kids out of their bedroom isn't a solution to all of the challenges that we're going to face, but it felt right to me to make sure that he was just with us when he was doing whatever he was on the internet. It just felt like he was less likely to click on things he might otherwise click on. And it felt like I could easily lean over and say, oh, what are you watching? So it just felt much better. But Listen, I have a little quiz for you, Elliot Ray. So
I'm not nervous at all. I've always told my kids I'm like quite cool, and so I'm scared that this quiz is going to show me up.
I think you're pretty cool. But
Am I
I
pretty
think by
cool?
the end of this quiz, we'll realise that you are not down with the kids, I'm afraid.
Uh,
So
okay, go on then.
these are words. Over the last few months, I've been making a note of words that my kids use that I have no clue what
I
they're
love
talking
that. You've
about.
been writing it down. So did they say something? You get your notepad out.
Yeah, but I can't tell them I'm doing it because I once told them, I was like, oh, I'll write that word down. And they got really upset. They obviously see this as their secret terminology and they don't want the adults to know what they're talking about. I like make a mental note that they've said a word and then scurry out and write it down. And so I built up basically a dictionary of words that kids use. And I'm going to test you and see if you know. Firstly, see if you've heard these being used before.
That is fine. I mean, I have a question though. Is there a prize? If I get all these right, miraculously,
just the cool badge.
Just the cool badge. Is that an actual badge you're going to send me in the post?
I mean,
or is it kind of... Yeah? Can you... Sure, there's a cool dad badge.
I will make you a badge, Elliot, and send it to you.
But that'll make me less cool if I wear it.
Depends how good I am at making badges, I suppose, but you'll have to wait and see for that. Okay, are you ready?
Let's go. No, but let's go.
Right, first word, Giga Chad.
Giga Chad. That sounds like something you would use if you're like having a laugh and someone loves your jokes. You're like, do you know what? You're a Giga Chad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're kind of there. Yeah.
See? But I'm down with the kids.
Well, I mean, maybe we're going to learn here, Elliot.
Okay, go.
Actually, I underestimated your knowledge of kid language. Giga Chad sort of means the ultimate man. I'm thinking these words are not like, I mean, they're a bit sexist, let's be honest. But these are the words the kids are using. Giga Chad pretty much means the ultimate man. I mean, that my kids seem to use it quite freely for like anything.
So is it like, okay, I scored 4 goals in the football tournament yesterday. Like I'm the guy. Like
you're the Giga Chad.
I'm the Giga Chad. Okay, cool.
Right, yeah. Cool. Okay, Rizzler or Riz. I will say it's nothing to do with smoking marijuana.
Okay, because that's where I went. My mind went to the blue Rizzler.
Because we are of an age where that's what that meant.
Exactly. I haven't touched it for a while. But yeah, Rizzler. What else does it mean? I think it means like a really big dinner. Like, get me my Rizzler. It means like a half chicken and chips and coleslaw and a side of garlic bread in Nando's. That's what I'm going for. Mate, do you want to have some Rizzler tonight? Like,
I mean, I can see it on a menu.
Yeah, the big Riz.
The big Riz. That would work. That's not what it means, no. I mean, we're close, I'll be honest. It means Riz is short for charisma.
Yeah. Charisma, okay.
So it means someone with loads of charm.
Okay, that's quite nice.
He's got the Riz.
That's a passionate term.
You could say, like, he's the Giga Chad with the Riz. I don't think they say that, but I'm just... Right, this is my favourite, I think, of all of them. Skibidi.
Skibidi. So there was a big drum and bass MC called Skibidi back in the day. I don't think they're talking about him. So Skibidi, no. I think that's someone that's really fast, like a really fast runner. Like he's quite Skibidi.
Yeah.
Yes, that. So I'm going with like a Usain Bolt kind of Linford Christie kind of character. This guy is like the fastest in the year group. He is Skibidi.
Now, the interesting thing is it could mean that because Skibidi has no real meaning. Okay. It doesn't actually mean anything. And I feel like we've been missing this from the English language, a word that is actually completely meaningless.
It's like a filler.
It's a filler. Skibidi.
So maybe I'll do that at my next corporate talk when I'm on stage and I'm trying to fill that gap.
Things to say. You just say, oh, Skibidi. But it can simultaneously mean something depending on how you use it. So it could mean good, it could mean bad, it could mean weird. It totally depends on the context of the conversation, but it is also complete gibberish and a filler word.
So what context have you seen your children use Skibidi in?
Well, they just sort of shout these words out at the moment, but Oxford University Press did a poll with children to better understand how it's used. And some of the examples given, are you ready? This really cracked me up. Some of the examples given were, my chances of winning are very Skibidi.
That makes sense. Like zero. Like my chances of getting the answers right in this quiz.
But then it could mean my chances of winning are zilch, or it could mean like they're really high.
So is it based on the understanding of the person receiving it will know?
Yeah,
Like if you know,
they
you know,
would get
kind of
it.
thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
I
might use that one.
Another one is, it's totally skibidi mode.
Hey.
Yeah, you still with me?
Yeah, I'm
you
trying.
look lost. And then some people that will have heard of the term skibidi will have also heard of skibidi toilet.
Skibidi toilet. Oh, Joey, what are you doing to me?
Right. Well, so this is where the word skibidi comes from. So skibidi toilet was an animated series where there's a battle between human-headed toilets and humanoid beings with electric devices for heads.
Sounds good.
I mean, just try and picture it. Human-headed toilets having a battle with humanoid beings with electric devices for heads. Yeah. I mean, so that's what our kids are watching.
Okay.
So then we have next Gyat.
Gyat. I feel like I should know this one.
So it's spelled Gyattt, or can be Gyat.
Is it like an offensive term? It sounds harsh.
No, it's not. Like, it doesn't mean git. Like, it's not. Is
it a term of endearment?
It's a way of expressing excitement or admiration.
Okay.
And it's especially used for very shapely buttocks.
Wow. Okay.
So you could say, I assume you could say, they've got a skibidi gyat. Or even a gigachad gyat, perhaps.
Gyat.
Yeah, gyat. Then next we've got phantom tax. Now I've been calling this phantom tax for a while until I was corrected by my
phantom
child.
So this is one word, right?
No, 2 words. Phantom tax.
Okay, give me a clue. So is this to do with a object or a person?
Well, so it's more a person than an object.
Okay. And is it to do with a tall person? I don't know where I'm going with this.
I don't know where you're going either. Does it mean large human? No, it doesn't. There's an American streamer called Phantom.
Okay.
And as far as I can tell, he's come up with this phrase, phantom tax. And it essentially means the theft of food between friends.
There was no way I was getting that.
Who knew that needed a phrase? So I think we should hear the explanation from the man himself.
Okay, go for it.
And he actually, in this explanation, brings together all of those different words that I have just mentioned.
Love that.
Are you ready?
Let's do it.
What is phantom tax? Phantom tax is basically, let's say your friend having a meal. He's having a good meal. And you just want a piece of that meal. Like, you know what I'm saying? You need to share. That's your friend. And friends share, right? Get you a little piece of the meal. It's the phantom tax. You just go ahead and just, let me get a little bit of 5%, 10% of the meal. Maybe 20%. Just depending on how you feel that day. You know what I mean? I know lately they got the new thing. They got the stick in at your gap for the Rizzler. You're so skibidi. You're so fit. I don't know what that is, but shout out to the little bros that came up with that. I don't know what that is, but that's the phantom tax.
I feel old.
It's a whole language developing that is used to like cut us out, isn't it?
Yeah, but I guess like every generation has that, right? When I was younger, we had slang words parents didn't understand. I guess we're just on the parents' side of things.
Yeah.
What are my words? Oh my gosh, what are my words?
My mum used to speak egg language. Have you heard of egg language? So she could have conversations with her friends and her parents didn't understand. So,
like black slang.
No, I don't know.
It's like when you say words backwards, and I never do it, but some people could speak and say the words backwards and understand each other.
Wow. I mean, that's a talent.
Yeah, no, it's impressive.
No, you put egg or egg in front of every vowel and every Y. So I am sorry would be egam segaregi.
Yeah, that's different. It's part of kids growing up, right? And then find their own identity and their own kind of sense of purpose, and every generation has their own unique way of doing things and saying things. And yeah, it's lovely and it's nice. I guess as parents, we just got to try and understand a little bit, just in case it is maybe not so good, or they're using that language to disguise other things they're doing.
But we can't let them know that we know the meaning of these words.
Yeah, can't let them watch this podcast. Definitely not. Can you imagine?
Suddenly the words become very uncool if your parents
Exactly.
start it means. Hey, listen, I haven't finished. There's more.
Oh, there's more. Okay.
I heard my son say this yesterday and I wrote it down immediately. He went, I'm playing against the sweat.
Against the sweat.
It means somebody who's really good at a game.
Okay.
They're like sweating out of their fingers. They're that good.
Okay. Fair enough.
And then the final one, which you're going to know what this means, but my kids say it for everything, has got to be slay.
Slay. Like we're doing right now. We are slaying
We
this
are
podcast.
slaying. I'm not even going to explain what that means. I think we all know what slay
Yeah, if
means.
you know, you know. If you know, you know.
So there we go. That's your test over and done with.
So everyone has been educated this week. You know, we bring you insights from experts, and we also bring you real life language from the Generation Alpha.
I hope you've all been writing this
We are
down.
slaying and we are cooking.
We are Giga Chads.
Giga Chads.
So coming up, we have got the wonderful Lenore Skenazy. I have been so looking forward to this episode coming out. She's just a badass, isn't she? I love her.
I think it will change the way you parent. If you listen to this and don't do something differently, I'll be amazed. Like, it's going to change the way you see freedom with your kids. It's an incredible interview. Lenore is amazing. Let's get into it.
So, Elliott, you very luckily have your parents close by and they do quite a bit of childcare for you, but they go to Grenada for 3 months every year. What do you do when they're gone? How do you look after yourself and your relationship?
Well, I feel very sorry for myself. Going to Grenada is amazing for them, but it's not so great for us. Luckily, we have Bubble. Bubble provides us with emergency childcare, backup childcare, and ultimately the opportunity for us to have date nights and also go to the spa every now and again. Because us parents, we need to maintain our identity. We need to maintain our self-care and our relationships. So Bubble is incredible for when my parents jet off to Grenada.
Find and book background checked nannies and sitters who can be with you in as little as an hour. Trusted by parents you know. Like us, search Bubble Childcare in the App Store or Google Play Store. There isn't a parent on the planet who wouldn't say they want their kids to be resilient, independent, and mentally well. But whatever we are doing isn't working because rates of mental illness amongst children and teens is on the rise. Between the ages of 15 to 24 in the UK, male suicides 3 times more common than female suicides. 12.5% of men in England have a common mental health disorder, such as anxiety, depression, or obsessive-compulsive disorder. And according to the Mental Health Foundation, 50% of mental health problems are established by age 14 and 75% are established by the age of 24. Figuring out what we need to do to improve these statistics is a really big question. And different people have different theories, from reducing screen time to increasing the amount of broccoli you eat on a Sunday to listening to more classical music. Lenore Skenazy, author of Free Range Kids and president of Let Grow, has a simple theory that we are treating our children like they are always in danger when they are not, and we need to let them go. When her son was 9 years old, she let him ride the subway on his own, which acquired her the nickname of America's Worst Mom. Lenore, we are so pleased to have you here with us today on To Be a Boy. Welcome.
Why, thank you. I thought that was quite a compelling introduction to the problem. So thank you.
It's a good start. So I first heard about Free Range Kids about 2 years ago. I heard you on a podcast and I just was captivated by what you were saying. And honestly, genuinely, it has completely transformed the way I parent my kids. Literally the next day, I said to my eldest son, right, you're going to walk to school on your own tomorrow.
How old?
He was 9. And since then, he's walked to school on his own. Now my youngest is 9. He walks to school on his own. I took the reins off. You let your son ride the subway on his own when he was 9 years old, but it was a bit more than that, wasn't it? You set him a challenge. Tell us a bit about what you did and why.
No, it was literally that. And it wasn't even us setting him a challenge. It was, we have 2 sons, also 2 years apart, sounds like the same as you. And the older one had never asked, but the younger one started asking me and my husband if we'd take him someplace he'd never been before, here in New York City where we live, and let him find his own way home by subway, or I guess you say tube. And so my husband and I discussed this, and finally we decided, okay, it makes sense. We're on the subways all the time. He speaks the language. He can read a map. He wants to do it. We trust him. We trust our parenting. We trust our city. Let's do it. And so one sunny Sunday, I took him to Bloomingdale's, which is probably like, I don't know, what's your fanciest department store? It's a super...
John Lewis? John Lewis?
Oh, John Lewis with the wonderful commercial. Oh, I love them.
You know about the John Lewis commercial?
Yeah. You know why? Because somebody sent me one. Someone sent me one a few years back that had something to do with a kid doing something on their own. I don't remember what it was. And then there was the Elton John one. Oh, my God. So great. And so anyway, so the point being that he went to this fantastic department store that doesn't have great commercials like yours does. And I took him there because underneath the store is the subway stop. And then you just take it straight down a couple of stops and you get off at 34th Street, which is our famous store, Macy's, the Miracle on 34th Street store. And then you had to take a bus across town because we lived in an obscure part of Manhattan. And that's what he did. And he came into the apartment levitating with pride and excitement that he had done something that he felt he was ready for, that was grown up, that we had believed he could do. And I didn't even write about it at the beginning, even though I'm a columnist and all I do is write every single day. But I hadn't done it as a publicity stunt, and I hadn't done it as a big deal. It was just something he wanted to do. So it was like about 2 months later or something that I didn't have an idea for a column. So I wrote Why I Let My 9-Year-Old Ride the Subway Alone. And 2 days later, I was on every possible television show in America, getting this nickname of America's Worst Mom. And so I started the Free Range Kids blog that weekend to say, look, I love safety. I want my kids to live. So I wrote about it because it struck me as something that, like, when your kid is ready for something and they let you know, it is incumbent upon you as a parent to consider whether it makes sense and not to just always dismiss everything as, no, it's too dangerous. I'll do it with you. When I was on the first of the many talk shows I was on, they had some lady sitting next to me and Izzy, my son. And I was like, who's that? And it turned out it was a psychologist, of course. And she was there to tell me that there were safe ways I could have done this. Like, I could have gone with him. I'm like, how would, or I could have stalked behind him, or I could have given him a phone, or I could have sent him in a group. And I'm like, if I thought it was that dangerous, I wouldn't have done it at all. I mean, I really thought that it was something that he was capable of. I'm a newspaper reporter. I know what's going on in the city. And in fact, I've been all over the city more than most people to do stories, and just have met so many very nice people, so many kind people, that it struck me as it was a big deal in that it was a milestone, but it wasn't a big deal in that it was dangerous.
Did you expect the reaction that you got? I know that when I tell people the story of what you did, some friends of mine will gasp. They will say, well, on the subway, and he was 9 years old and he was on his own. And then they think about it and they start to process it, and they start to realize that actually their shock is kind of needless and a bit silly. Did you expect there to be such a big reaction when you did it?
I've been writing columns since 2000. I wish all of my columns, started international discussions about deep philosophical and parenting issues. No, I didn't expect it. And in fact, the other day, some fan from like the olden days sent me a column I wrote when my kids were 2 and 4, which had been like, parents need to chill or something like that. So clearly I'd been writing the same column every couple of years, but this one just happened to take off. And I think it was because everybody outside of New York City thinks that the New York City subway is hell. And so why would you send your kid down to hell with just a map and a Metro card? So it happened to be an iconic place, but it's also how we have to get around in New York City. And then it was not me saying one should try this. It was, this is what I did with my real kid. So I think that had a lot more resonance. But I'm happy to hear that when they pause for a second, your friends think twice about why their first impression is to be appalled. Because I'd like to hear what's going on. There's something called thinking fast and slow. This Nobel Prize winner, Daniel Kahneman. Your first thing is always like your fight or flight syndrome. Yeah. And then secondly, thinking slow is like, wait a minute, there's a million people on the subway. He's a kid. He could talk to somebody if he needed help. He's been on this subway line before. He knows where to get off.
I mean, some do think about it and think that actually their reaction is not right for the situation that I'm explaining. But some think about it and still think actually that it was madness. I mean, we had a similar story in the UK recently where a TV presenter called Kirsty Allsopp.
Yes. That made it over here.
Did it? Wow.
my
Okay,
God,
so
big story
another
here.
international story about letting your
Mhm,
kids
mhm.
go off and do stuff on their own. So she has a 15-year-old son, and she let him go interrailing and across Europe, and he went with his 16-year-old friend. So he's actually young for his year. He's about to turn 16. She talked about it on X, I think, Twitter, whatever we're calling it now. And she got such a backlash from people to the point where she was reported to social services for doing it. And I have had conversations with friends about that where they've said, well, that his brain's not fully developed. You know, his cognitive function won't be fully developed until he's 18. Why could he not have independence but have it in a safer way, not in a different country? Why could he not go to Scotland, or why could he not go to Newcastle, somewhere where she could get to him more easily rather than going to a different country?
Right. So I'd say in that case, if those people want to send their kid to Scotland or Wales or whatever, that's good for them. This was a mom who knows her son, who knew what her son wanted, knew what his plans were, and thought that it made sense for him. And I'd say that she obviously knows her kid better than any of the onlookers who are second guessing her decisions. And the idea about brains not being fully developed, I feel like my brain is in the opposite direction now. Should I not be allowed to go on a European vacation? Oh, when she was 50, fine. But now, look, I don't know. Mom's getting a little, dodgy. So what are we going to do? Oh, you could go, but your IQ is 97. I think we want people with 100 IQ to be allowed to travel, but not 97s. I mean, really, who is to say what is the perfect person to be allowed to do something? I mean, the world is out there. The world has always been out there for kids to explore and for parents to not know every step of the way, everything that they were doing every single second. And I think the big lie of our era is that we must know everything our kids are doing. We must supervise them all the time. Otherwise, they are in grave danger. And really, the only people who can help them any step along the way is their parent, who they can then reach by phone or smoke signal or whatever. And it's so belied by all of history, by all of our own history. At 15, you were not tethered to your mom. You didn't have a phone when you were 15. Your mom didn't know where you were every single second. You wanted to have adventures. Sometimes you did stupid things. Sometimes you found yourself taking a little risk that you thought was dumb in retrospect. Sometimes you had to even obfuscate when your parents asked what you were doing or where you were. And maybe that felt a little bad, or maybe it felt a little good that you could handle yourself, right? The idea that the only person who can keep you safe and make you capable isn't you is very debilitating.
Yeah. Why do you think so many parents are terrified of letting go?
I mean, I'll whip us through the 4 reasons that I talk about most in the Free Range Kids book. But I think the 5th reason is the biggie that we will focus on at the end, which is control. But first of all, when I was growing up, it was so long ago, there wasn't as much media. There certainly wasn't an internet. There was barely cable television. When all of these things came along with more space to fill and a more desperate grab for eyeballs, because it wasn't 3 stations or 5 stations or 100 stations. It's everyone in the world now is trying to get your attention. The easiest way to get the attention of anybody is to say child in danger. And even better than that is mom puts child in danger. There's nothing more delicious to chew on than that. We're chewing on it now. So the media is partly to blame. And when we get all these law and order procedural television shows and all the Taken series with Liam Neeson, the information that comes into your brain, that should have no impact on you. Let's think only about reality. And even when it's reality, you hear the worst stories from every corner of the globe. And so your brain is filled with worst case scenarios, and it can't even picture the boring reality, which is most kids waiting at the bus stop, kicking a pebble, where's the bus? I grew up in Chicago, freezing to death while they're waiting. I mean, life is not this Law and Order episode, but our brains are filled with them. And when we ask our brain, is it safe for my kid to walk to school? Up comes, Law and Order and some horrible case. I don't know your horrible cases. I know my horrible cases in America. John Benet Ramsey was on the cover of this week's People magazine in America. She was murdered 20-something years ago, and it's still so salient because it was a white blonde girl who was murdered. And so that sells magazines to this day. I would be embarrassed to be People magazine and still shoveling that stuff at people. So the media is to blame. We live in a litigious culture. We start thinking about things through the lens of like, is this safe enough? Could I defend myself in court? What if somebody decides to sue me? I'll get rid of the swings. I'll get rid of the trampoline. I won't have my kid do anything. It's just not safe enough. We have experts telling us, like, always coming up with something new and obscure to be afraid of, because to be afraid of, like, band saws and, flaming garbage cans. But did you know, according to Parents Magazine, you must be afraid of the laundry hamper, because what if it's made out of wire, and what if the wire protrudes and hits your child's cornea and slices it in half? That was really one of their cover stories once.
Wow.
So experts are always there coming up with new things that you could be worried about so that they can sell something new, whether it's a book or an article, or the fourth thing is a device. You can always scare people by telling them your child is going to be hurt or fall behind. But I have a product that will prevent that from happening. And here it is. And so the marketplace is making us afraid. But I think the overarching big kahuna is the big lie that we were just discussing before, which is the idea that if you do everything right, and if you never take your eye off your kid, either physically or electronically, then you can control everything they do, see, eat, hear, try, watch, lick, whatever, and then they will be safe. And that leaves the parents extremely anxious because it's all on them, and extremely bored because now I have to play all the games with them, and I have to make sure they understand the vocabulary words, and I have to let them win, but not so much that they don't understand what losing is. Boring, boring, boring. And then the kid is bored because instead of exploring something or climbing a tree or, falling or meeting a frog or doing anything, it's like, oh, honey, I'll pick up the frog for you. Let's see. What should we call it? Should we call it Christopher? Christopher sounds like it could start with a K, but actually it starts with CH. That's a blend. It's so over the top for what we expect of parents, and so underdeveloped for what we expect of kids. We think they wouldn't possibly be interested in anything unless we point things out. Look at the chlorophyll is why the leaves are changing color. It's like, give me a break. Kids are created to be curious and competent and to explore. And it's like the kids are in the passenger seat and the parents are the drivers. And that when you're the passenger, you don't learn anything. You don't know where you are. You don't know what your route is. So we keep putting kids in the passenger seat of their lives because it's safer, and then wondering, why are they so depressed? Why are they so anxious? And I would say, why are they so passive? And I think you're passive when you're passenger.
Lenore, I'm so interested in this because I think it's so different to what we're told.
Yeah.
We're told to micromanage. We're told to be super involved. Like, parenting is a verb now. We must do parenting. And I'm just interested in what kind of responses, like positive responses, have you had from people? Give us some examples of parents that have been inspired by your work.
Turn to Joeli there. She just sent her kids walking to school. And what has been the impact on the kids?
They love it. They definitely feel a sense of independence from it. My eldest, I've given up trying to get him ready in the morning. He is responsible for himself. He has to get himself to school. He now walks with a friend, and they just, they walk out of the door with their shoulders back and their bags on, looking really pleased with themselves. And I genuinely think it's made a huge difference to him. Just that simple act of saying, you can walk to school on your own. And honestly, it was terrifying. And I live in a really, really safe city, but I found it really scary letting go something that simple, a 10-minute walk to school every day. And of course, now I'm fine with it. You relax into it after a little bit.
So we started letting our daughter, she's 9 as well. We live too far from the school to let her walk. It's like 3 miles.
That's far. Okay.
But what we do now is we stop the car down the road from the school, and she gets out and she walks up and she goes into school by herself. And at the beginning, I was like waiting for the school to call me. That call where they didn't come to school, it's like panicking, but it never happens. She's fine. And she feels so much more confident, her self-esteem. She feels older, more mature. She loves the fact that we trust her with that small little thing, but she loves the fact that we believe that she can do it. And I think for her growth, we've seen, I don't think it's just that, but that and other things we've done, hopefully, have resulted in her really this year kind of coming on leaps and bounds. And it's incredible to see them kind of really growing into themselves and believing in themselves.
That is so cool. So it makes me think many things. I've just written little notes to myself. One of them is, I don't want to take time right now because it would be like dead air, but I once was at a lecture. It was just for women graduates of something. And the woman on stage said we all had to close our eyes and think for a minute or so about someone who made us feel terrible about ourselves. Somebody who thought you were fat or slow or stupid or ugly or whatever it was. And And then when we opened our eyes, she said, where do you feel it? And if your listeners try this, or if you try this later, my guess is you'll feel it, as most people do, as like a heaviness in your chest or something holding down your shoulders. It's a weight, it's a headache, it's a stomach ache for some people. And then I have them do the opposite, which is really fun, which is close your eyes and think of someone who believed in you. Maybe before you believed in yourself, somebody who thought that you were smart, or you're going to do it, or you can ace it, or you can try out for the team, or you're just a good person. Somebody who made you feel like it wasn't a black tunnel ahead. And when I did that, I thought of my 7th grade teacher, who my book is dedicated to, because she had me trotted out to like garden clubs to give little lectures about the archaeology I'd been doing. And she told me that someday I would have a boyfriend, which I could not believe. In 7th grade, there was absolutely no evidence in real life that would possibly happen. And what we're all talking about now is being that for your kid. I think you can do it,
Right.
And at first, maybe I was a little scared, but you've proven yourself to me. I mean, when you said that your daughter knew not only that you thought it was possible, but that you believed in her, that is the most powerful thing you can give a kid. Right? They know that you love them. That's good. I guess that's number one. But number two is recognizing that I'm not just this infant. I'm not this dumb bunny. I'm a human and I can do it. And my parents think I can. That's a fantastic gift to give your kids. And it's the gift that we keep taking away from the kids and from the parent.
Yeah.
And so from the kids, you understand, they get the feeling that they're not capable, that everything is so dangerous or so hard that they can't do it. And what happens in our culture now is we're with our kids so much of the time. We don't get the joy of seeing that they know how to cross the street, or that they know how to be good to a friend, or get themselves out of a tough situation, or be brave and bold, because we're always either with them or watching them or listening in. The Gizmo Watch allows you to listen in while your kid doesn't even realize it. And so the kids don't see that we trust them, and we don't get a chance to trust them because we're always helping them. So really, it's no surprise to me that the Surgeon General here in America came out with a report last year saying that the mental health of young people is terrible. And then he came out one month this year saying, guess what? The mental health of parents is terrible. I'm like, guess what? It's the same thing. This puzzle piece fits right in here. Parents are bored and don't get the reward of being parents, and kids are distrusted and don't get the reward of showing their parents that they're blossoming. So Let Grow, the nonprofit that grew out of free range kids, and I have to brag about my co-founders. They're just great. One of them is Jonathan Haidt, who everybody loves because he wrote the Anxious Generation. And one of them is Peter Gray, who you should have on your show, who wrote a book called Free to Learn. He's a professor of psychology in Boston who has spent his life studying the importance of mixed age, all together, jumbled up free play. How do kids figure out what they're going to do? How do they negotiate? How do they compromise? And together we decided Let Grow could not be thought leadership. Thought leadership does not interest me anymore because I've been leading thoughts for years and they don't go anywhere. They go in a circle from, oh, that sounds good. I want to try that. But what if something bad happens? My kid would be hurt and I would have to kill myself. Thoughts just go in a circle. They ruminate. So action is the only thing that changes parents. So Let Grow has something called the Let Grow experience. All our materials are free. And it's something that a school gives the kids. It's simply a homework assignment that says, go home and do something new on your own with your parents' permission, but without your parents, like walking to school or playing outside or making the pancakes. And when they do this, a couple of things happen. First of all, the kid knows that they're trusted, that their parents believe in them. Secondly, they get a chance to finally do something in the real world. It's not an assignment. It's not a worksheet. It's I'm actually getting the bologna. I'm actually making breakfast, right? So that's fantastic. I say bologna because yum. And then the parents get this reward that we were just discussing, which is like, that's my kid. Look, Joel, you started out this podcast with my kid walked to school and I was afraid and then I was proud. And now I'm proud that I'm not afraid. And I'm proud of my kid. And so everybody gets rewired, which is why I'm talking to you, because it's free, it's fun, it's easy, it makes everybody smile, and it gets at the root cause of a lot of today's miserable kids, which is we're not being treated like people, we're being treated like delightful, stupid pets.
One thing we've started doing is when we're shopping, I will say to my daughter, we were Christmas shopping on Saturday and we're looking for makeup for my niece. So we go in there and we're looking for a certain brand and we
you'll
can't
never find it. That's it.
Exactly.
Lost cause.
So I say to her, you go and ask. You ask. I'm not asking. Okay. This is for your cousin. This is your request. So I'll step back and she'll go up to the shopkeeper and say, excuse me, where's Estee Lauder?
I'm cute.
Or where's Avida? And I just watch the interaction between this adult and her. And she just loves it. The fact that she is empowered to go and do that. And she just loves the fact they'll listen to her. She feels so grown up. I think it's so important. And as you were saying, Lenore, it's not just the feeling for the child, it's what we feel as well, that sense of warmness inside.
Yeah. I was really interested in what you're saying about the mental health of parents deteriorating, because if you look at the data, parents are spending way longer with their kids now than they were 50 years ago, like double the amount of time. And we're also working a lot more. So it's impossible. We're trying to shoehorn in all of these hours of care and paid work. And then no wonder we're feeling completely exhausted and completely deflated by the world. And I know when I was younger, my mum would just kick me out the door from the age of 5, and I'd be off like throwing cow pats at people and setting fire to things, and then would get home at tea time, you know, and then she'd be like, all right, there's your dinner, off you go, do your thing. So I think when I let my eldest walk to school on his own as well, it was a relief for me because it was another thing I didn't have to do. It seems crazy to me that we've sort of shoehorned ourselves into these boxes of micromanaging everything. And then we're like, I'm knackered. Well, yeah.
We'd have to do everything because it's better for kids. And it turns out it's worse for kids and worse for us. And it takes more time and it takes more money. And it's driving us crazy. What if we maybe thought about reversing that just a little bit? So the Let Grow experience is great because it pushes parents to let go before maybe they're ready to do a big let go. Okay, so you walk to the end of the block or you know, whatever, you go to the park and you're going to be at the other end of the park. It pushes parents. And then John Haidt always says a collective problem needs a collective solution. So everyone from the 3rd grade class or everyone from that elementary school or everybody from that district is doing it. So you're not the crazy mom sending your kid to walk to school. Yeah. It's everybody's doing something new. The parents compare notes, the kids compare notes, and you've re-normalized the idea of basically our childhoods, which was walking to school, playing outside. I never threw a cow patty. I'm happy. I probably will never have to do that in my life, but that was your childhood, right? Send the kid out, for God's sake. Yuck. But, you know, there must be some fun to it, right? Or riding your bike or getting some candy on your own. And I would say if there's a way to not track them, like maybe just give them a walkie-talkie or something, but not track them, that's also, I'd say, more empowering because you are showing I truly trust you. I'm not just trusting you because I have you electronically in my hand.
Lenore, have you come across parents who maybe disagree on the approach? Say, for example, the dad's more willing to you know, let their child range and the mum's not, or vice versa? What would be your advice for couples who maybe aren't on the same page around this?
Well, that's why it's great that it's a homework assignment from school, because then it's not the dad saying, honey, it's about time. No, I'm afraid. It's not interpersonal anymore. It's homework. So the kid has to do something. I did hear once, usually it's the mom who's more afraid, and I can say this because I did a television show that nobody watched called World's Worst Mom, where I went to 13 families that were very, very overprotective, and most of the times it was the mom. But in one case, that a school doing the Let Grow experience out in California, the father was really afraid. And the mom had sort of resigned herself to just, you know, what can you do? I mean, if a person feels like nauseously afraid, you can't really push it because it seems like you're being cruel. But she did cut out all the worry in the world doesn't prevent death. It prevents life. Yeah. So she cut that out and she put that on the kitchen cabinet. And the dad finally said, okay, the kid was in 4th or 5th grade. So I'd say 9, 10, 11 years old. He wanted to ride his bike to school. And they said, no. But on a Saturday, they said, okay, you can ride your bike to your friend's house. There's less traffic. It's a Saturday. The friend lives closer than the school. The kid went, had a great time, came home, told of his adventures, was just really happy. And that was Saturday. And Monday, same as normal, we're going to walk with you to school. And then on Tuesday morning, the dad looked at the mom and said, why aren't we letting him walk to school or ride his bike to school? And she's like, we never have. And then he did, because action breaks the cycle. He had broken it already by letting his kid do something without him, even something simple. And it rewired him. I mean, usually it's just this fear cycle. When I say that thoughts just go around in a circle, they do, but action changes it. He can't walk to school, but he just did. And he came home with a squirrel. You know, this is so great. Or cow patty, whatever. The whole idea is that nothing changes until you change. And how do you make the cart go before the horse? You make it a school assignment.
Firstly, if you're ever in the UK, I am going to take you out cowpat throwing. That's a mission.
Note to self, don't
But-
go to UK.
It's hard. By the way, it's hard cowpats, not soft
I
ones.
figured,
You've got to get them hard. This podcast obviously is about boys, and lots of films of the 80s portray boys out having adventures. So,
They sure do.
Of Heat and Goonies
Stand By
and
Me.
Stand By Me.
Yeah.
And, there's so many films that I remember from my childhood where it's boys having an adventure, having fun. Do you think this is more important for boys, or it's equally important for boys and girls?
I think maybe the physical freedom, like to climb a tree without somebody saying, get down, that's too dangerous, that might be more important. But we all have these souls that long to be part of the world and long to be seen for who we are, not just a baby, not just a pet. I've heard so many stories of girls, like this one girl who was finally allowed to walk to church, and she felt so great about that. And then she got to help take care of her twin younger sisters. And then she ended up getting her ears pierced, and then she tried out for the swim team. And then the thing that she said that was so transformative for her was that she could finally stop arguing with her mom so much, because she understood what her mom had been doing all this time, how boring it was, how cold it was to just sit there through endless soccer practices. So what we long to be as kids, as the Tom Hanks movie, speaking of these movies, is big, right? We want to be seen as real people. And I don't think there's a gender to that.
Yeah.
How much do you think this should be led by what your child asks for? Or do you kind of preempt they're 9 or 10, I'm going to encourage them to walk to school? Or do you wait until they request to do something?
I got to get back to the Let Grow experience again. It makes them have to ask for something that they're ready to do. So in the study that was of independence as therapy for kids with a diagnosis of anxiety, this was done with kids age 9 to 13 or 14. And one kid was afraid to walk upstairs and downstairs in his own home without a parent with him. He was 10. And the therapist finds out from the parent what is the big problem. And that was the big problem in that family. And then the next week he meets with the parents and the kid. And instead of, as he normally would in exposure therapy, saying, well, I hear you're afraid to walk upstairs. Tonight, I want you to go upstairs for 5 minutes, and then you'll come down. And then the next week, we're going to do 10 minutes. Instead of doing that, it turns out that even the kids who are afraid to do certain things have other things they want to do. He wanted to walk home from school. He wanted to take the Long Island Railroad. So by asking him to do these things, and saying that the parents are going to listen to you, if he wanted to take, the train across the country to California, they would have said no. But the Long Island Railroad, and they're going to drop him off at one stop and pick him up 4 stops later. So it's a give and take between the parents and the kid. But the fact that you have to come up with something. I mean, some kids will do some stuff that's lame, and some kids will do stuff that's bigger. And then when they talk about it in class, because sometimes there'll be like a little debriefing, and kids write on a little piece of paper that's shaped like a leaf. I went to the store. What happened? I forgot the peas or whatever. Then they're all sort of encouraging each other. What I really want is just to make it normal to expect kids to be part of the world again. I mean, we had some sort of brain fog that came in that washed away the memory that kids always went and got candy. Kids in, growing up in the savannas, they shot birds at age 4 and 5, and they went on hunts at 7. And the idea that they can't do anything at all, the American Academy of Pediatrics says children should not be pedestrians on their own until they're 10. I'm like, when I was 5, my crossing guard was 10. So we have this amnesia about kids used to be part of the world, and now they're, in the booster seat. So it's as simple as that. There was just a study done at Yale that I love, that hopefully you'll see on my blog, letgrow.org, was that once parents are told that when kids do things on their own, it's actually a learning experience, which you'd think they would get, but they don't necessarily know. They feel like our brains have been sucked out by this culture of we're just going to explain everything to you and tell you everything. Anyways, once they find out that even tying their shoes or zippering up their zipper is a learning experience, they intervene half as much. So the word must get out that when your kid is walking to school, it's not you being lazy. It's not even you being neutral. It's you giving your kid a learning experience that's also an emotional experience, that's also a psychological experience that also impacts you. So it's all good. Simple as that.
Yeah. And going back to that conversation about couples who maybe have different approaches.
Yeah.
In your work, have you seen where families may take different approaches to their sons and their daughters and the freedom that they give to either one?
I'm trying to think back on this television show. It's once you've decided that the real world is dangerous and that only you can keep your child safe, it doesn't seem to be gendered. It could be that, I think that boys are going maybe a little more crazy, not being able to do anything physical. They sit there all day in school and then they're in the car and then they go to an activity where, as it turns out, organized sports, kids run around a lot less than if they're just playing with each other. There's experiments that show that physically kids are more active when they're playing. Of course they are, because everyone's involved. You're not waiting a turn. You're all playing, right? And if it's boring, you come up with a new game to play. Whereas if it's boring at the, baseball practice, you're out of luck because you just got to wait for the coach to decide. We heard from a large sporting organization that does, I guess you call it football, we call it soccer. And they had read Peter Gray's book, Free to Learn, and they decided to devote the first 10 to 20 minutes of the actual practice, not before the practice, but of practice time, to free play. And one of the coaches told me, now the kids are running to practice. And I'm like, what were they doing before? They were trudging, because it was like basically they were going to school. It just happened to be soccer school, right? And then he also said that now they throw down their backpacks and they start playing. And before, they would wait for the coach to tell them what to do. So they were these apps waiting for somebody to turn them on and, program them. And now they're humans. And I think that for boys to be running around and to make their own fun and to laugh and to fall and to not have it all be something organized and tutted over is very, very liberating.
Oh, you've really touched on something there for me as well. I think we really try and constrain children, not just in not giving them independence, but in terms of the amount of noise they're allowed to make and the amount of play fighting they're allowed to do, particularly with boys, because my boys just love to throw each other around and shout really loudly. And I'm constantly going, shh, calm it down, stop doing that all the time. And actually they need some time to be able to just...
Here's pro tip, don't be with them.
Yeah, leave them to it. Yeah.
Then you won't hear them and they get the fun of playing.
Yeah.
That's the big problem. We're with our kids so much. We see everything they do that's wrong, mean, dangerous, dumb, and we intervene. So the only solution is not to be there. My new phrase, I'll try it out on you, is for a moment to be teachable, you have to be unreachable. And we are too reachable.
Yeah, but you have got some great lines, Lenore. I'm
Thanks.
writing these all down.
You know what? I get to give a TED Talk and I have to corral them all into 10 minutes and then memorize them.
I'm going to have Post-it notes stuck around my house with Lenore Skenazy quotes.
Right.
We're just going back a little bit and talking about safety, because this is something that you've said previously that really, really made a point with me, that we're not living in a time that is less safe than it was when we were children. In fact, the data says the opposite. The data says that we're living in a time that is more safe, and yet we're micromanaging our children like we're living in the most dangerous of times. And you probably don't know much about the UK data, but can you tell us a bit about what's happening in America? Because it's very similar over here.
Yeah, there's always a study being done, is it more dangerous or less dangerous now than when you were growing up? And people say more dangerous than last year. And, crime was going up in the 70s and 80s. It peaked around 93 in America. It's been going down since then, a little blip during COVID, now back down again. And yet, as I was saying, this book I was just reading about, You Are What You Watch, it's when you consume stuff that isn't even factual, even when you're not watching the news, when you're watching Law and Order, when you're watching any of the other scary shows that are out there, it all just accretes. And so you end up thinking that times today are less safe. And also the brain works. So Jonathan Haidt, before he wrote his more popular books, he wrote a less popular book called The Happiness Hypothesis. And he talks about how you feel something first, and then your rationality comes along a little later. Oh, no, our kids can't go out because it's the cars, right? Which is actually my fear, is cars. And, you'll say, oh, cars are bigger today, or there are more cars today. Or if you don't say cars, you'll say crime. Or if you don't say crime, you'll say bullies. And if you don't say bullies, you'll say predators. And what you're really feeling is just plain fear. And you put a name to it, and you think that it's rational, but I'm a reporter by trade. Rationally, none of these things are more dangerous. Yes, there are cars. Yes, they are big. They have better braking systems than when I was growing up. They have fewer blind spots. And 2 kids, I was at a school recently, and I got to talk to the kids, which I don't always get to. And 2 of the kids told me that their parents were almost willing to let them walk to the store or walk to the park. But they both said this in sing-songy voices. These 2 girls are like, it's not that I don't trust you. I don't trust everyone else. And it's like, well, when you live on, I don't know, Jupiter by yourself, maybe you can walk to the store. Not that there'll be a store because you're the only person there. I mean, what's this world that you can trust your kid in and not trust the other people? Our job as parents has always been to prepare our kids for the path, right?
Yeah.
Not the path for the kids. So you tell them you can't get in a car with anyone. If you have a question, ask the lady behind the counter. If you need something, if somebody's mean to you or scary, kick and run. Report. So it's not like you don't get your kids ready for the real world. Look both ways. When I was a kid, you look left, look right, look left again. I guess for you, it's look right, look left, look right again.
And there were adverts on the telly, weren't there, showing you how to cross the road?
Right, because there are going to be roads. If you want to get from one place to another, chances are, if you're not in cow patty heaven, you're going to have to cross a street, right? And there's going to be a car at some point. And so the idea that they're only safe if they're someplace where there aren't, cars, people, buses, dogs, or stores is crazy.
Yeah, there's something else that has dawned on me during this conversation as well, is I've been thinking about this from the age of sort of 7 upwards, and actually it starts from baby age. I remember when my eldest was born, not wanting to leave the room, like he'd be in his cot and I didn't dare leave the room. I'd be going, Tom, could you grab me that thing over there? Because I can't leave the room. Even though the baby can't go anywhere, the baby's asleep. And I was so paranoid that I was going to somehow harm him by not watching him constantly. Yeah. And that is madness. I look back on that and think, what was wrong with me? What was I doing? I sent myself insane.
I remember there were times of not having a bath or a shower because you can't leave the baby. And the baby can't actually walk away. Yeah. Be like, I can't have a bath. I haven't had a bath all day. It's true what you're saying, Joeli. It's just not really healthy for anyone. It's not good for us because we don't wash and we need to wash daily if possible.
So the other thing is that we grew up in smaller families. And so I, for one, I'd had no experience with babies before I had my own. I hadn't held one. So there is a little less familiarity. Maybe they seem more fragile because, you haven't grown up with 3 little sisters and realized it's all fine.
But it really is frightening when you look back. I mean, I feel quite sad for new mum me that I felt that I had to do that because the pressure was insane. And it's not couched in reality that anything could have happened to that baby. And yet I was obsessed. This has been incredible. We are honestly so grateful you have taken the time to come on this podcast with us. As I said to you earlier, I am obsessed with your work and your writing, and I'm just really thankful that you wrote that blog and have had the opportunity to talk to so many people because it really changed me in the way I parent. Where can people find you, Lenore, if they want to find more?
So the most important place to go, I'd say at this point, is Let Grow. L-E-T, let, new word, grow. Not let's go, not let it grow, just plain old Let Grow. Look at Let Grow because there's the stuff for schools. There's stuff for parents to, I always think collective action is better. So I love when schools do the Let Grow experience, and the other Let Grow initiative that we recommend schools do is stay open for mixed age free play before or after school. There's an adult there, but they're like a lifeguard. They don't jump in. They're just there in case of emergencies. And so kids have to organize their games and get buy-in and, argue if the ball was in or out, all the stuff that doesn't have to happen if it's an adult organized activity. So all the materials are there at Let Grow. You click on schools, you can click on parents. In America, we have 50 states, and we've changed the laws in 8 of them to say that neglect is when you put your kid in obvious danger, not anytime you take your eyes off them. So that's a bit of, of reassurance to parents. You could pass that law in England. And then there's a donate button because everything we do is free except eat. So that's it. Just go to letgrow.org. And my book is Free Range Kids.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
You're welcome. I'm American, so I'm just a sucker for your accents.
And the cow pats, even though you call them cow patties.
Well, that's my Midwestern words. Yeah.
Thank you, Lenore. Thank you.
Thanks.
hope you all enjoyed that brilliant interview. Just wanted to jump on and talk quickly about how it's changed the way that we parent and how we feel after that episode.
Do you know what is interesting is that off the back of the adolescence conversation where we are trying to get our children off the screens and into the real world a little bit more, the flip side of that is giving them more freedom. And that has to come with trusting them to be independent. And for me, the conversation really fundamentally changed the way I did things. So my eldest is 9 in year 4, and I would let her out outside of school and she would go in. Now I let her out around the corner from school and she walks in and she feels so good about it. So now when we go to the shops or we're coming back from somewhere, she'll say, "Daddy, can you just park around the corner?" And I'll just get out and walk my way home, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And now we'll go shopping. I'll give her some money. She'll go into the shops, the sweet shop. She'll buy her own things. She'll talk to the shopkeeper and she'll come out just really proud that she did it by herself. And she's seeking more and more independence. And I can see how it's building her self-esteem. And she needs it. You know, soon she'll be in secondary school. She'll be going to school by herself. It's really important to start that independence now. And I think off the back of what we've seen from the conversation, like this week and last week, we need to get our kids into the real world. And so that means being confident to let them venture a little bit. What about you? How has it changed your parenting approach?
And the same, I turn the TV off on a week. If we're not doing anything on the weekends, I just kick them out of the house now. You know, I'm lucky that we live in a relatively safe area, but I do force them to just go out and they don't have a way of contacting us. And I feel fine about it. I've got more and more confident and comfortable. And I feel like I've encouraged other parents in the local area to do the same, which has been really gratifying. We end up having all the kids around at our house, which, is a joy and a chore. And so ours is the halfway house where all the kids pile around here. I like having loads of people in the house and loads of people hanging out. It just means there's a lot of tidying up to do afterwards. But there were a few things that Lenore said in that episode that I just thought I'd give a bit of a British explanation of, because I did not know what Law and Order was. She kept talking about Law and Order, the TV program. So I looked it up. It's actually a 30-year-old, very popular in America. It was in the UK as well for about 24 series of it. And the general plot is there's like a violent crime that happens. And then they do in the second half the trial of that violent crimes, just so you know what that's about. Also baloney, like when I was younger,
it's a language, right?
Well, when I was younger, baloney, you just heard it on programs of Americans saying that's baloney, like that's rubbish. Well, it's a bit like spam, so it's like finely ground, like you grind it to a paste meat and then put it together into a sausage. She says it's yum. I mean, it sounds absolutely gross, doesn't it? And my favourite quote, because she has some absolute pearls in there, was, "All the worry in the world doesn't prevent death, it prevents life."
And what you're describing, it's old school, right? That's what we used to do. We would play out. We had no mobile phones. We had our freedom.
Yeah.
And we just came home. And I think that the interesting thing is the conversation about the internet. They're in the house. They're safe. They're probably safer outside these days. You know, it just means that we have to be a little bit uncomfortable at first and let them venture. But I love that. People around your house, like the community spirit, you know, the other parents, and you just trust your kids. And that is, for me, that is a fantastic upbringing.
Yeah. Well, hopefully my kids will feel the same.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
See you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
I'm a transformation director with 15 years' experience helping businesses make major change. I bring a deep understanding of problem solving, trend analysis, and stakeholder engagement. I'm able to operate at both executive and team level. I'm personable and pragmatic with a huge passion for my work.
Pregnancy and maternity discrimination shreds the careers of 74,000 women every year. At Pregnant Then Screwed, we can stop it. Visit careershredder.com to show your support.